Hello, my name is Patrycja Rozwora and you're listening to Kitchen Conversations. This podcast aims to open up the mysterious and vague Eastern Bloc to a broader audience. For each episode, I'm inviting one artist or researcher, and together we explore their relation, interest, and the urgency to create within the framework of the post-Soviet sphere. Here, I also wanted to thank everyone for listening and supporting this podcast. It's very rewarding to see that with every episode, the community is growing, which was, of course, the whole point of this platform. If you're a regular listener, you might want to check out my Patreon page, where you can support my work and help me develop this amazing but time-consuming project. You can do that on patreon.com/kitchenconversations. Welcome back, everyone. Today, at my kitchen table, I'm hosting another Kitchen Conversations guest. I'm very happy to finally release this episode with you. I waited a while since we originally recorded this episode back in February, still before the war, and of course, due to the circumstances, I waited a little bit with releasing it, and I thought it would be better to focus my energy on something else. I created Kitchen Conversations for Ukraine, where I speak about the arts and culture of Ukraine, and those episodes will still continue. I'm still preparing 2 of those for you, and perhaps there will be more in the future, so don't worry about that. And I really also liked the format of hosting the podcast, let's say, by myself and doing all this research, but I thought it would be good for me and for you also, I think, to change a little bit the format and come back to our original interview way of spreading knowledge and speaking about art. So without further ado, I will say a few words about today's guest, and then we jump into the conversation. Sophia Tabatadze is a Georgian visual artist currently working and living in Berlin. She began her artistic journey in Tbilisi, after which she moved to Amsterdam to study, same as me, at the Gerrit Rietveld Academy. Her work has been exhibited worldwide, among others, at the 52nd Venice Biennale and the 10th International Istanbul Biennial. Her experimental documentary film Pirimze, that we will be today speaking extensively about, had its premiere at the Visions Du Réel in Nyon. Back in 2021, Sophia co-founded a company called Mukao that makes innovative products from corrugated cardboard. The idea of the company that we will also be speaking about is based on 3 simple principles: creativity, playfulness, and awareness. Welcome, Sophia, to Kitchen Conversations, second attempt. Let's hope it works this time.
Thank you again for having me here.
I was saying that we met through the name of Kitchen Conversations and Soul Kitchen, your project, which we will be speaking about a bit later in the podcast. I think you were looking for different people working with kitchens, and that's how you found me, or how was it again?
Yeah, it's kind of when you are involved in a project, then you kind of develop some kind of radar for finding topics connected to it. So I made these drawings under the name Soul Kitchen, and then every time I would kind of hear the word kitchen, I'm still in the process, I'm kind of let's see, maybe there is a connection possible. So I think I listened to your first podcast where you interviewed Sophia Tabatadze. Then I realized your name is Kitchen Conversations, and of course Kitchen Conversations within the Soviet realm is kind of a topic. We noticed that there were lots of kitchen conversations and not too many texts or kind of things that were published afterwards, so somehow it rings a bell anyway. But then because of the Soul Kitchen, I was like, okay, let's connect. So I remember that I contacted you and I told you like, hey, yeah, this is, I made this book and maybe you're interested. And like some month after we are here, which is really nice. Yeah.
And the funny thing is like when we met, we discovered like there's a lot of things which actually connect us.
That we're both Rietvelders.
Exactly. Both lived in Amsterdam as well. And did
and
the
moved
same
after
school.
Amsterdam to Berlin. Because I moved to Rotterdam, but you didn't. To Berlin. That we went to the same art school, which is also super special, but like many years after. So we kind of...
Different experience, I guess.
Absolutely, I'm sure,
of the school. Yeah, please tell us a little bit about you being an artist, creative, or however you like to call yourself, and how you ended up being here and creating.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Georgia, so I lived there till I was 20, and then I went to study to Rietveld Academy, which you also graduated, which is nice that this also connects us. So I was 20 when I went there to study like visual arts, because I kind of really hated the art academy in Georgia, and I still hate it. I had like experience there 2 times in my life, once as a teacher for 1 year and once as a student for 1 year. And after both experiences, I was like, this building should be burned down. I really hated it. So Rietveld was kind of the first thing that I tried. And I was accepted, and I didn't know much about Rietveld, and Netherlands was somehow, because of language-wise, English would be accepted. So somehow it was kind of in a way, random. And it's interesting then how these random things then kind of give you the direction for the rest of your life. So I went to study when I was 20, and I lived in Amsterdam 5 years. Studied, graduated, and then I lived in Rotterdam for 3 years. And then I thought somehow this really well kept and well organized Netherlands was kind of, I had enough of it, because especially my work was getting more and more like political and social kind of interests and aspects in it. So I was like, why am I here then?
There's not much place for that. Right?
No.
Everything works so well somehow that there's no...
Yeah, it's all very well organized, and kind of I was looking very much at Georgian situations, and if you want to kind of make some political works and you are from Georgia, it's kind of good. And then I thought then I moved back after 8 years. And then I lived 3 years in Georgia. And then I'm kind of jokingly always saying, then Europe called me back. So after 3 years, I was invited to a residency in Berlin by Sharing Foundation. The residency is at Kunstlerhaus Bethanien. So there was a 1-year stipend. And I was really hesitant, because I was like, but here... And I was really doing well in Georgia. I really enjoyed being there. I did so much when I lived there. And so I was a bit like, should I do? Because, 1-year residency is like 1 year residency. 3 months residency is you kind of put your life on hold a little bit and you come back after 3 months. And 1 year is different. And I didn't really want to move somewhere else. But after 1 year, I stayed here, and I think I'm like 14 years now in Berlin. So I kind of
Are you a Berliner now?
Now, I don't know. I never became a Berliner. I always have a feeling I still don't understand a lot. I think like Tbilisi and Amsterdam and Rotterdam are more comfortable size cities for me. This is too big, I never really understand. It doesn't have a center, it has many centers, so I never kind of really operate here. But my son is Berliner now, so in a way that makes me a mother of Berliner. So that's why I kind of will stay here for still coming years.
And how did you become an artist?
I think I kind of know from the age of 14 that I am an artist, or I want to be an artist. I think
that's quite specific, 14.
Yeah, I don't know why 14, but it's 14. 14 is certain kind of a year in my life that certain things were pretty developed at 14. I started drawing. I used to draw a lot, and I kind of really just, went and devoted myself to it. Yeah, maybe a bit earlier, because at 14 I already started this art college, which is something that you either can graduate your school or you kind of go to this art direction, which was really, really great for me back then, because I really was skipping the school almost every day because I really didn't see any reason why. And this art college really was great. This was like 5-year experience before the art academy that I said should be burned down. So this is a different thing. I would not burn this, but it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. So it was an art college. I don't know if it exists in somewhere else, but it's some kind of a Berufsausbildung, maybe something like this. That you kind of have a professional education for something. And this was for artists. So like we would go there, and from the morning till 1, we would have either drawing or composition or painting. So this was like all we did, which was really great. I think, all of a sudden I was like, wow. No lessons, no nothing, just this, Back then I was already pretty decided I'm an artist. I used to do drawings. I mean, drawing was a thing that I did the most, and drawing was also something that I remember now, like a little story that like I was doing music as well. Like I was playing piano, because I don't know, every Soviet kid was somehow believed they should learn piano.
Especially girls, right?
Especially girls, maybe even more. Yeah, true. Maybe boys, they would also start, but then if they would resist,
would be fine.
But the girls had to learn also to do something through this resistance. I think this is kind of the girls' thing. So anyway, and then there was this teacher who kind of, I changed my teacher at the last year, and I was really bad at playing piano, and I was already in the 7th grade, which was kind of graduating grade. And she was like, you have to play at least 4 hours a day to come to the exam. And 4 hours a day sounded like absolute impossible amount of time.
Crazy.
Because if I would sit at the piano, I think after 5 minutes I really was already like, yeah, I'm done. And then I kind of told to my mom a bit like, I don't know if 4 hours, it's really like, it's impossible. Like, I don't think I can do anything for 4 hours. And she's like, when you draw for more, sometimes even longer than 4 hours. So this was some kind of from the outside, a reflection on me of like, oh yeah, maybe something I do for 4 hours without thinking about the time. So drawing was that, like, where time disappears, where you kind of do something and time disappears and you just do something. So this is how I started. Then I went to Rietveld. Rietveld was kind of, it's more conceptual school. It also kind of, if you come from a country like Georgia, it also pushes you a little bit to do more political and social work, which maybe wouldn't be my own choosing, but at one point you don't really know what is your decision and what has the school given you. It became more and more political. I was kind of interested in some political or social aspects of my own work and of work of other people as well. I think another thing was like I stopped drawing back then because drawing is the hardest for me to talk about or to explain, because it's so much connected with flow and losing the time, and things happen. And at Rietveld, we were very much taught how to talk about our work and how to defend ourselves when the either teachers or the other colleagues criticize. So we kind of,
True, yeah.
And I think it was a good experience for me to kind of learn how to not to take everything very personally and not cry every time after the critics, but to kind of learn how to talk about it. But drawing was very, very hard to talk. Still it is, I'm like, yeah, this is the drawing, And then I kind of, instead of learning how to talk about my drawings, I think I learned how to make different kind of work, if I think about it like this. So I started making more installations, and installations are more planned in your head, and therefore it's easier to talk about why you started it, and Yeah, I don't think it was a bad experience because I think it's good to learn how to talk about your work, but I still didn't really learn how to talk about my drawings, which is probably
maybe also okay,
fine.
Right?
Yeah. Now I don't have this pressure that I have to know something. But, when you're a student, you kind of think like, oh, maybe I should be. able to do this and that. And so then I did more installations. Then I went back to Georgia and I did there a lot of performances. I had a colleague with whom we worked, and she was coming more from the dance and movement. And then we did a lot because we had a lot to say and we wanted to say all these things right there. Loud and angry. Also kind of social and political aspect these works had. Then I did this film, which we're going to talk about, which is called Pirimze. That was kind of my, one of the largest projects in terms of like, I think for 5 years I've been only looking through the like glasses of Pirimze at the world. And now I am kind of, slowly returning to drawing, which was really something that, I stopped for a long time and I really didn't know how to come back. I didn't even miss it. I think it was more the other people who would always tell me like, oh, but your drawings are beautiful. And then you're like, oh, yeah. But I really didn't know how to approach it. And now I kind of approached it from this a bit more unexpected direction, which was, more playful through my kid, I approached it not from this professional artist pressure, but more like, hey, let's start having fun on the table, not on the table, but on the exactly where it started, on the paper again, so this is how it kind of came back to me, let's say.
I think art schools can kill certain joy of art as well, definitely kind of.
For sure. Art schools, and I think I had some kind of artistic block for a few years, and then I was kind of searching a lot, like soul searching and kind of looking inside me. It was not necessarily only art world, but like profession, like when art becomes a profession and you're becoming a professional, like you almost don't allow yourself to have fun and enjoy and do things. And, I don't know, kind of, I have seen so many rigid artists that, just do it as a profession. And I think this happened to me as well. Like you don't allow yourself to have failures. You don't allow yourself to have fun. And then, work becomes like this. Maybe the concentration goes like on how I'm going to talk best about it instead of how I'm going to have best time while making it. Maybe that's the bridge or like the kind of a gap.
Yeah. But let's jump into your film, or like the film and the research and the work you did around it. Yeah. Since I think you had fun with it, since you spent like 5 years almost, or like there was some fun part in it. Let's see about that. You were interested in a building called Pirimze. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, tell us about it. What is that building? And
so you're right. It's not a film necessarily only. It's a multimedia project. And I didn't start thinking about it as a film. I started thinking about it as a building. So this was a building which I remember throughout my whole childhood. It was like super central in the center of Tbilisi. This is where I was born and where I grew up. And this was a place where people from the city and from around the city, from the regions as well, could bring their stuff to repair. So it was a repair paradise on 6 floors. So you could basically repair anything, starting from glasses to the jewelry to shoes. You could also get like a haircut and get like your clothing repaired or sewed. And so it was kind of individual approach.
And why was repairing such a big thing?
Repairing was not in the beginning such a big thing. I think the building was from 70s, and this was then back then kind of this individual service, which was kind of not so common in Soviet Union. So if everything was kind of more like factory produced and stuff, there was all of a sudden the need to, do the individual things, like also like sewing, like haircut. So it was kind of individual services for people. And then, of course, we know that the Soviet goods and objects were not super good. I mean, now it's also another perspective because we have seen so many even worse kind of produced shit that now all of a sudden you realize, hey, maybe it was not as bad as we believed back then. It was bad, but like it was the situation of deficit about everything. So if something would be broken, you wouldn't be able to buy again. I remember like my mom standing in the line for getting a television. So getting things was like super hard. And then, if that would break, then you would kind of go and repair it. And then in 90s, like repair became the almost only possibility to survive because people really didn't have any money. So then repair became some kind of a need, it was not kind of, so the building would kind of change its profile and direction depending on the years, So from in 70s it was different, in 80s it was different. In 80s, like the people who worked there, they apparently made a lot of money because it was kind of already at the, it was the Soviet Union was not as strong anymore, and the goods were not there, so somehow it was possible to bootleg and to kind of do things out of nothing, So with watches, it was a lot of times connected some kind of joke that you would bring your watch there, and you would kind of lose these good parts, and it would be replaced with cheap parts, which could also be, which could also be happening. So I don't want to kind of, what's the word for it? When you kind of only remember the good things, because many people also think like, oh, really, I really don't want to go to that building. Because it was kind of a shady, and it was really like a market kind of place, when you go and you can have this experience. I mean, I remember it in Turkey and in Morocco, maybe, when you go somewhere and all the people come and ask you to do, like come here, and you don't really know, you cannot really decide which shop you can choose or not. So it was like that. It was kind of a marketplace, but because it was Soviet Union and the market as such didn't exist, it was a special place. So I kind of sometimes say it was a little capitalistic system within the Soviet Union, but in a very, very Soviet way, because, you would think at the end when the building kind of was sold, these people would be able to somehow survive because, these were the capitalists, but they were very Soviet capitalists. So in a way, in this kind of neoliberal capitalism, they also didn't find themselves. They didn't succeed. It was more kind of the idea of the capitalism looking from the Soviet Union. So this was the building. Another thing that connected me to it was also there was this kind of a booth where you could make photos. So this kind of, you put the coin in it and then after 5 minutes you have a photo. So I also mentioned already in different contexts, but it's now interesting that it comes together. I would skip school a lot when I was 12, 13. And then somehow to kind of register this skipping in some way. And I think I'm kind of a collector without realizing that I collect a lot of things. So I start collecting things and then I realize after 10 years that, hey, I have a whole series of that. So we would go with friends and make this photo of ourselves to remember. Now it's like super cool thing, no? Like in Berlin, there are some places where you
can
go
do
and
it anywhere. Yeah.
But there it was the only place. So we would kind of have the photo, like with friends with whom we were skipping school. So this was a special place to go. It was very central and it was a market. So it was kind of a building. So in winter you could kind of, go and kind of keep yourself from like being cold outside. And it was kind of also no man's land. So you could kind of just stroll around and be there. So it was kind of a building that somehow always kind of attracted me, but I was not really part of it as well because I was a young girl and it was a very man-dominated world, especially the ground floor, which I kind of started as my inspiration was kind of starting from there.
Just here on the table we have your publication, which you did as part of the research. And also you include here the photo, actually, which is so nice.
Yeah.
Because it's just like an object in the book. And as when I first opened it, I thought you just like left the photograph here.
Yeah, so this is a very personal part of this, of this building. Yeah, I think I started thinking about this building when I already lived in the Netherlands. And then 1 year I went back and the building was no longer there. So this is this thing that all of a sudden you realize that something that you think is so much part of the city and of your own city as well, because cities also change. And then there are some neighborhoods that, we don't go anymore from the people from that city. All of a sudden I realized, oh my God, I really love this building all these years, and I never made one photo or one video or one recording of it. So this kind of idea of like, okay, it's gone and it's gone forever, and how am I going to reconstruct it? So with this idea, I kind of walked around many years. And then I kind of started thinking like, yeah, what is that I miss about this building? And it was this ground floor, which was like this kind of small booth, tiny ones, 1 meter by 1 meter. And they had all kind of their small little worlds of themselves, So a watchmaker would have a lot of watches and would have a lot of, pin-up posters like of naked girls. And it would be kind of like very, very men-dominated world, as I said, on that ground floor. Upstairs, there were also lots of females in the sewing ateliers and stuff. The ground floor would be this kind of repair of bags, of zippers, of umbrellas, of like anything whatsoever. Buttons, button maker was there, someone who would kind of take your button and cover it with a leather. Stuff like this, yeah.
It's like unimaginable things for now, no?
Yeah, exactly. It is. And they could also do like these metal things, which, kind of the Madonna 80s kind of style. And then, lots of girls would do this for their graduation dresses or something, like they could make things that were non-existing in Soviet Union. So like, let's say if someone would kind of import the magazine with like new fashion, these people could produce things with their hands. So this is what was magic about it. And so then I kind of started walking around in the neighborhood thinking like, okay, I'm already too late. How shall I start this? It's gone. And especially for the film, you always need, for visual art, you don't need this so much. For visual art, you can already, something that's gone or you kind of, the digestion already has happened. You can show it in your work. But for film, you really need to show what's going on and not like what has happened. I started walking around in the neighborhood and then I discovered there are like 10 or more smaller spaces which appeared in the neighborhood, which are also called, not also, but which kind of took the name Pirimze. So I thought it's interesting that, something is gone and then it's so much still present that, everyone wants to be identified with it. From that point, it was easy to research because I went in one of the shops, in one of the workshops, like they were scattered, like smaller groups.
But quite close,
quite
right?
close.
The same area.
Yeah. In the same area. So if you would walk around, you would just find like 10 Pirimzes signs outside. So I started walking around and I went in one and I said, I want to rent a table here to work. And they were like, hey, what? Like imagine it's all like men. And then, I'm like, I want to kind of reconstruct the Pirimze. So I kind of want to talk about, think about it and, talk to you about it. So they were like, okay, fine. So I kind of rented one table. And what I started was to kind of talk to people about what it was. So I started mapping the place. So I would ask, so who was sitting here, who was sitting there? And then they would remember like different times, of course, because it was changing. And then I met one guy who, then I didn't continue this research because he was so knowledgeable. He would just kind of tell me everything. Yeah. And, we kind of built this trust and he was very interesting guy and he was a button maker and he also kept he was a fighter for the building. So, so kind of very shortly to tell what kind of has happened is there was a building. So it was like a marketplace, a small capitalist world in the Soviet setting. And then it was privatized, so these people also became shareholders, but partly, of course. And then the bigger part was owned by other people, and then they kind of kicked these people out. And then these new owners, they decided to make a Class A business center, which is kind of this vaguest name. When you kind of in your own city, there is a new building being built up and you don't know what it is. It's like always a business center and it makes you always wonder which kind of funny business. And so then the building, when I was filming it, it was standing empty. I think it's now also partially empty because somehow, it was was built on the ruins of something else, and it was selling itself as something pretty different. So this was kind of
it didn't work.
Pretty clear.
Yeah, you also showed that in the movie, right?
Yeah.
There's a scene of that.
Exactly, yeah. So this guy has been fighting, and he's been kind of, besides just fighting, he's been registering this whole thing, So if there would be some articles in the newspaper, he would keep it. He had a video camera. He recorded many things. So, all of a sudden, this was like, wow, the source. And for him, I was also the source of like, okay, why am I interested in it? What am I doing?
Right? I guess.
He liked it. In the beginning, it's always, like there is always this thing of when you come to a place which has many questions and many uncertainties and unclarities, like who bought it and why, and some kind of corrupt schemes are there. It's always this suspicious of like, are you a journalist? Are you going to help us? And if you're going to help us, how? So, to break this through and to say I'm an artist, which is like super vague, like why are you interested?
Yeah. Totally.
And it's hard to explain because like I back then I kind of did few film developing workshops, participated in them because I didn't really have any knowledge how to make a film. And there I would also be asked, kind of this elevator pitch kind of thing that, in 2 minutes you have to say why. And you're like, I actually have no idea. So actually my film was about understanding why I want to make a film. And if I think about it now, I think I wanted to make a film in order to look behind the stages or look the backstage of this little personalized booth. So where as a young girl I would go but not really see the inside, and I kind of knew that it's a corrupt situation as well. I kind of wanted to deconstruct this corruption. But that was kind of part of the story because now the whole neighborhood is being gentrified. So like then whatever didn't work for that one building now is kind of applied to the whole neighborhood. So as I said, when I started filming, it was already too late because the building was not there. But what I didn't realize that now what I have captured, because there are some parts in film and some parts not. I mean, we have captured a lot of outside as well. The whole neighborhood is now gone and gentrified. Even it has a new name. So it's really
crazy.
Yeah, all of a sudden I realized I have this kind of time document which is no longer there. So I was actually not late at all. I was really in time to capture the whole change of the
beginning of the change, perhaps.
Yeah.
Just for the ending of this part, talking about this work, I wanted to ask if actually the people, the crafts people, saw your work, some part of it, either the movie or one of the exhibitions.
Yes and no. They were not so interested. It's usually you work with people and then somehow, I mean, I invited some, not everyone, because I was kind of also not ready for their reactions on the premiere. And then this guy who gave me a lot of materials, he died. That was really a pity because he kind of could be someone who would be interested. And then some people, when I went there afterwards, they asked me if the film is ready and I gave them the link. So like whoever was interested, I shared, but there were many who kind of just participate and are kind of not really interested.
I mean, they have their struggles, I can imagine, right? They don't mind so much about an artist.
Exactly. No, not so much. And even if film is done, doesn't really change anything for them. So in a way, it's not really there.
For sure, I can understand that. But we want to see the film, so where is it possible to see it?
So
Sophia?
I opened, the film was kind of, with a password, and I opened it like recently, also preparing for this talk. I was like, okay, it's already so long ago, it should be open. So it's on a blogspot, right? So it's Pirimze blogspot.com, and there is a whole... there is a chapter about like all the other aspects of the film, of the project, and the film is also available there on Vimeo. Yeah,
that's great. I will include the link. I think it's always nice to have the visual together with our conversation. You know,
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a teaser.
Yeah. In In this few-minute break, I could be promoting a useless product or an external sponsor that would allow me to make this project financially sustainable. Yet, I want to use these few minutes to tell you more about my Patreon account that I mentioned already at the beginning of this episode to show how you, listeners, can support this podcast financially. Patreon is an American membership platform, but working also internationally, that provides tools for content creators like me to run a subscription service. That way, creators can earn a monthly income and in return provide the subscribers with some cool rewards. Under patreon.com/kitchenconversations, you can find my subscription service where I offer 4 membership levels: a symbolic babushka for $2.50 per month, a friendly babushka for €5 per month, dedicated babushka for €10 per month, and a super babushka for €20 per month. I think it's generally great that all the material that I'm producing is free for you to use on all the podcast players, yet it would also be nice to have a type of income from all the work I'm doing to also bring the podcast further, to invite some more guests, speak about various topics, have a better quality, and also perhaps be able to pay at least a symbolic sum to the guests who share so much of their art and the insights of their practice with all of us. In terms of the reward, depending on your membership level, you will be getting an invitation to a membership group where I'm regularly sharing some material that I'm not able to share during the podcast, or some other information about Eastern Europe in terms of the political situation and the art scene, and so on and so on. Additionally, I'm also sending a regular newsletter with updates, with future guests and happenings, other things I'm doing around the podcast. And last but not least, and perhaps most interestingly and most excitingly, I am working on a publication, an artist cookbook that is almost in the production at the moment. It is a collection of recipes I collected so far during these 2 years on the platform of Kitchen Conversations. And again, depending on your membership level, you will be getting those recipes from me, either in a digital or physical format. So please check out my Patreon account, see if you can support in any way. Otherwise, you can also share the podcast with one other person that you think could benefit and have an interest in it. Some time ago, you found like a company together with another person in Georgia.
Yeah, I think 2 things came together. Yeah, I met this companion of mine who actually sponsored, like I was a curator at the Tbilisi Architectural Biennial. And at this Tbilisi Architectural Biennial, we were told that, cardboards could be provided because this person that they knew very well worked at the cardboard factory, and then they could sponsor it. I was a little bit skeptical about being sponsored in Georgia because you really don't know what they ask you. Like, if you have to wear a cap, then saying their company name or something. So kind of, I was a bit like, okay, let's see about it. And then this guy, a young guy came who actually, indeed sponsored the biennial with cardboard, big sheets of cardboard, like corrugated cardboard, for like, building walls or something like this,
Okay.
So
the material.
Material, yeah, exactly. So whatever we would use it for. Yeah, and he was really, he delivered when he said he would deliver, and, there was no much fuss about it. He said, like, mention our name in however you feel is going to be fitting. So it was really like somehow a very nice experience of like young businessmen and not of old businessmen who kind of immediately wants their name all over. And I was like, oh, this is nice. And then we kind of became friends. We started talking about some things, and he has 3 kids. I had 1 kid. I mean, I already had my kid back then also, still 1 kid. And this is the question in Georgia. When you marry, the first question is like when you are having a kid. And when you had the first kid, right away, people ask you, when are you having a second one? And you're like, come on, take a break. That's why I'm kind of making it clear. Yeah, so we kind of started talking, and he said, this corrugated cardboard, corrugated cardboard is this cardboard you kind of remember now for like if you remember the box where the wines are packaged. This is usually corrugated cardboard. And we talked about how interesting it would be to develop things for kids. Because, as a parent, you kind of have a lot of gifts to give away, and the materials are always something, harmful for the nature, and this is like degradable, you can recycle it. So we're thinking like, how nice it could be to do things. So we started from kids ideas to kind of do like objects for kids, which are degradable and they have interesting visuals because the artists kind of would work on it. And then the pandemic hit, and then I kind of was missing drawing. And then all of a sudden there was a lot of time to just be at home alone with my kid, not being able to go anywhere else. And then I started making those drawings. And the name of that drawing book is Soul Kitchen. And in Georgian, it's called something like behind the scenes, maybe. It's called Inner Kitchen. Inner kitchen would mean something like, you don't show your dirty laundry to someone. This is like how you don't show the inner kitchen to someone. The backstage, exactly. So like the drawings are really from our everyday. So at home during the pandemic, and then I'm kind of starting drawing. So not as a kind of professional artist, but I don't have a studio I cannot go to studio. I have a studio where I cannot go because I'm with my kid. And I think like, which kind of format could fit. And I start like on the A4 papers, so something super small and super accessible, and pen. And what I do is like, this table would be great to start with, like I start with several cups, and then there is a microphone, and then there's a telephone, and then there is certain image on the screen, and I include that, and there is a book. So I kind of start from a very direct surrounding, and then I kind of let go and kind of do the imagination parts which connect them. So these were the drawings. Something that you don't necessarily show outside, but which is part. So in a way, from a feministic point of view of like the private is political, kind of this was kind of the situation of private being political, because you're kind of stuck again at home. And so I kind of then I thought like, okay, because we were thinking about the kids' objects already, I thought also with the kid, this professionalism and art that cannot be touched and something like this kind of goes away. If you have a kid, every work of art of yours can be touched and can be stained by the kid. And you don't want to be too careful, you don't want to be like, oh, no, don't touch it. You kind of think like, okay, this is part of the everyday, and it should be. So in a way, I thought like, these are my drawings. I didn't kind of simplify them because of it's for kids. So they're kind of really my drawings, and I stand behind them. But they're like ink drawings, and I thought, hey, colors can be added by other people, grown-ups or kids. So it's kind of a drawing that shouldn't be hanging on the wall as a way of like, don't touch it, but you can touch it, you can color it, you can do whatever, you can cut it out, you can spill on it, you can spit on it, you can have like orange juice on it. It takes everything.
Was that happening also to your drawings?
No, not so much. Actually, when I say that I did it with my kid, people think that like we kind of did it together. No, it's more like you guys just kind of find a format which is small enough and comfortable enough to be doing in between other things.
Because I can imagine you cannot just sit for hours and draw, right?
Yeah, but you find kind of some time, and these kind of drawings could be also started and then continued. And what happened, we did several workshops or like events where people colored together. Like we would like enlarge those drawings and hang it on the wall. What was really enjoyable for people, like when they reported it back, was that they would start one thing and then they would continue somewhere else, and then someone else would kind of continue coloring whatever they have started. So somehow this kind of a participatory something, or like kind of democratizing the drawing of like it's not one piece.
I like that, yeah.
It also doesn't exist as an original, because they're made on some kind of leftover papers, and then they're scanned afterwards, and sometimes they are put together in the computer. So like they as such as originals also don't exist. And I think this is kind of what I needed to free myself from, to go back to drawing. So not as a kind of this one and only thing, the original, like professional artist, but more like, more as an idea that, I started and I gave it to some other people to continue. Some people react to it, say like, oh, the drawings are so beautiful, I really couldn't touch it. And then I'm like, yeah, well, then take it out and put it in a frame and it's my drawing. It's like, I didn't simplify it or make it, made it kind of...
There's no instruction.
Yeah, there's no instruction, but it's also kind of, I didn't kind of diminish it and made it like only for coloring, it's my drawing, which can be colored. So if you kind of enjoy my drawing, you can just take it out and hang it on your wall. It's, you don't have to do anything to it,
So then the pandemic kind of got a bit more relaxed. You could leave your house.
Yeah. And then I thought, hey, I have those drawings and we have this idea to, produce things for kids from cardboard. And then I had to kind of connect it to cardboard. So then as someone who has been drawing, or I always had some paperwork and I always needed to carry things around. So then there is not a good carrying like a folder for the drawings. So I thought like, I develop a folder, which is good for carrying these drawings. And then I developed a folder, which I'm really happy about. You can carry your drawings with it, but you can also turn it into a Staffelei in German. It's some kind of display, which you can put on your knees. Easel. Yeah, exactly. But easel always sounds a bit like funny.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you can also turn it into a wall pocket and then you hang it on your wall and then you can keep the drawings or something else inside. So I developed this folder, and in the folder come this drawing Soul Kitchen. And then I went farther. The next project is another coloring book. It's more like pages. They're not attached to each other. And this was the idea to make something a bit more, which would be a bit more on the wall. Because the drawing, coloring book, then you put it back and then you put it somewhere else. But then I thought like, hey, something that would be a bit more present. And this is this birthday calendar where you can write the names of people whom you love. And then you have the drawings again connected to kitchen, but this time more like birthdays. So there's like cakes, there is like picnics, there are like some kind of recipe looking, things that, things come together. And the name of it is a tiger zebra marble, which is the different names of this cake, which is in German Marmorkuchen. I think in English it's called tiger cake. So it's these two doughs, black and white, and you mix it together and then a funny combination.
Yeah, I think people know this cake.
Yeah.
Probably everywhere it has a different name, but
exactly. So
tastes
like
similarly.
Georgian was zebra, and then in English, in some English-speaking countries, it was tiger, and then marble. And I was like, this is also a nice name. So now we have this calendar and we have this coloring book. And we have this folder, which also can be bought as an empty folder to carry things and to use it when, you see a lot of times people in the museum sitting and making a drawing, and this could be kind of turned into this, harder material where you kind of put on your knees and you can start drawing. So this is the new, like this new direction that we have started. It's a company, it's a Georgian-German company, and we're trying to sell those coloring books both in Georgia and in Germany.
Did we say the name of it? How is it called? The company?
So company is called Mukao, Mukao. It can be bought in some museum shops in Berlin, which I am super happy about. In Gropiusbau it could be bought, and in Walter König Buchhandlung it can be bought. And we're trying to, kind of bring it to several shops, which are more like, museum shop would be the best place for.
I guess on your website you have all the places where you can
I have
buy
all
it.
the places, of course.
Perfect. So I will include it. Yeah, I think the drawings are... I like the idea that they come from like very simple and recognizable objects, like everyday objects, which everyone has kind of. And then it really goes to the kind of abstract artistic mind, which I like the combination a lot.
The best reactions I got are like, I think the 10, 12-year-old kids, they like the most because they kind of see that it's not done for kids, it's for grown-ups. And they kind of want to be grown up,
like that,
they really like this kind of imaginary part, and they really go into it. And they, when I receive some reactions, they're the best, the most excited about it, which
so
is like
nice.
great. Yeah,
great. I also got one calendar from you. Thank you very much.
Yes, as a present, and I'm very curious how you will color it and how you will use it.
Yeah. Yeah, for the ending, I would like you to tell about a festival you're organizing, exactly, because it's happening quite soon, and I think a lot of people might be interested. So I hope, I think it's a great concept.
Another parallel event I started 6 years ago, maybe, because this pandemic kind of cut out the 2 years, so now I don't know from where to count. But the first festival, I think, was in 2016. It's called Grandmother Film Festival, and also for people who listen and know some films which have main character, grandmother as a main character, please find the blogspot as well. It's Grandmother Festival, blogspot.com. So if you Google Grandmother Film Festival, this should come up. Several friends kind of mentioned that they made films about grandmothers. And then I thought like, funny, it's kind of somehow in the air. Then I realized it's because of our age. And the age means that unless you kind of record something about the grandmother, all of a sudden you realize she might die. And then I got a kid, and then my mom became a grandmother. So somehow, I don't know, it kind of was in the air. And I was like, hey, if there are so many people doing project about grandmothers, maybe let's start a grandmother film festival. So I made an open call. And indeed, there were many people who did grandmother films. So I started collecting those films, and the good thing about the festival is that I don't mind which year it was made. So it could be some very old films, it could be super homemade, super personal films, feature films, documentaries, some memories, like 1-minute videos of grandmother dying and the grandchild filming it. So it's like very, very different formats. Usually I have around 25 films for festival. So it's a weekend of like 6 or 7 slots of 1.5 hours, probably, like sometimes one film and sometimes like mixture of like short films. And I usually do it first time in Rotterdam, because this is this space. It's called Nyon at my mother's space in Rotterdam. So she is the grandmother.
Nice.
And I repeat the same program then a year after in Berlin. So every 2 years I select new films, and then I show the same program, one time in Rotterdam, one time in Berlin. This year I will do again. So in May, I will have a new program in Rotterdam at Nyon, I think at the end of the May. But yeah, if people are interested, please follow. There is a Facebook and there is a blog, so I will post there.
Is it also possible to see it online?
Yeah, that's kind of the first time that this question came up, because now we are kind of so used to online format. I don't think I will do it at the same time, because it's two kind of different brains you need to prepare a real festival and to do an online festival. So I will do first the Rotterdam Grandmother Film Festival, and then I'm thinking to maybe also make it online. Yeah, I will have to ask the makers, because this was not kind of the intention in the beginning, but now I think like, yeah, why not? I mean, and the good thing about like everyone who has made a film about grandmother feels so strongly about this festival, because it's like, oh my God, yeah, you know, because it's kind of all the grandmothers together.
It's for sure a thing. I mean, I also interviewed my grandmother for the podcast, and I got a lot of very positive responses. So it touches people, you know.
Yeah, so when we met, one thing was that we both did Rietveld, and another time then when I was going through like your podcast and listening to some of them, there was this grandmother. I was like, yeah, of course, the grandmother's tales are also of course. Yeah, so for me, this grandmother, I don't have a film about my own grandmother. I also had a bit like difficult relationship, let's say, with my grandmother. And I think for me, it was some kind of a way of looking at how other grandmothers are. It was almost like adopting a grandmother and thinking like, what could be a good relationship? And it's not necessarily always good relationship. I mean, there are, of course, a lot of like troublesome relationships. And so it's not like necessarily a like super sweet grandmother who kind of does everything how the kids want, which is kind of this classical image that would come to my mind. It's many kind of different crazy grandmothers, and it's great that grandmothers can come in different forms.
Nice. I think a lot of my listeners are actually based in the Netherlands, so that might be a nice tip for them to go. And I hopefully you can see it in Berlin.
And you can come in May in Rotterdam and do like anniversary,
that's
2
true.
years anniversary of your project.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good idea.
In the kitchen of the Tante Nino, which is a very, very homey grandmother-like
Let's talk
space.
about it. But finishing about kitchens and grandmas, I wanted to ask you for your favorite food.
Yeah.
From a place which feels like home for you?
Mm-hmm. The place that feels like home to me is still Georgia. And the favorite food there is one definite favorite food that's called Chakapuli. It's a meat dish, but lately it can also be made with mushrooms. And it's a dish which has kind of a lot of greens. So it's like there is petersilie, there is coriander, there is a lot of estragon, and there is Mirabelle. I don't even know how this thing is called in English. I think sour plums, Mirabelle plums.
Yeah, I know it's from Poland. Like this tiny
little
orange
sour.
bowls,
So they're green in the beginning, and then they turn orange or red. You put like a handful of these, which makes it like sour, and it's really, really delicious sour juice it has. So it's kind of really like, when I think of this food, it's like immediately this kind of watery mouth that you're like, oh, I got that food. And it's some kind of a spring food, because this Mirabelle, they kind of ripe in spring. So like it's some kind of it's a food traditionally eaten during the Easter, because this is the first time that you can prepare it because of this Mirabelle. And the nice thing about Berlin is that you cannot really buy it. Yeah, maybe on Turkish markets sometimes, but it's a bit different. But all the Georgians who live in Berlin, they know several trees in different parks. So you kind of sometimes you kind of go hunting for it. I know that there is one in Görlitzer Park and one is in Victoria Park. And I have been kind of with 5 Georgian people kind of going and picking this plums from the trees in the parks, and people kind of thinking a bit like, okay, what are you doing here? But it's some kind of a marking of each other. You kind of, the Mirabelle trees, where are they? Yeah.
So nice.
So it's possible to even make it
here. Nice. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'm curious to try it, probably the mushroom version. Thank you so much, Sophia. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much for having me here.
And this was it for today. Thank you for reaching till the end of this episode. I will see you next time with another great artist and speaker. And as mentioned at the beginning, you can support this podcast via Patreon on patreon.com/kitchenconversations, or alternatively, you can also help me develop this platform by making a one-time donation, following my Instagram account, or leaving a comment on one of the podcast players. All of the needed links are placed in the show notes of this episode. Take good care. Until next time.